What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and to the broader markets. I'm going to break down some big news involving the CPI data that just came out, what President Trump just said about his trade policies, and why we have big data again coming out for tomorrow, from big bank earnings to PPI. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below or sign up with my QR code that's right over here. Moomoo is an amazing global brokerage that consists of many exclusive offers. If you sign up and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 25 in total. You deposit $5,000, and you're guaranteed 60 free stocks. You also qualify for an 8.1% APY in uninvested cash, and the offer ends at the end of July in just a couple of weeks. Another benefit of signing up is that you're going to gain access to data to see what's happening with order flow and unusual options activity, which is very useful for your guys' trading journeys, whether you're looking at ETFs or stocks. So check out my link down below or sign up with this QR code that's right over here. Anyways, now let's get on with the video. So as far as SPY is going, okay, this is very, very interesting. We had this cup and handle like structure in the very beginning of the day, but I warned you guys that we need to see SPY hold 626. If we had lost 626.25, we were expecting this to dump to fill the gap. And then at the same time, if we had held above 627, we were looking for more potential upside. That was the range we were looking for in my morning video. What happened was SPY lost 626. We gapped up. We pushed very nicely in the morning, but as time went on, SPY started to dump once the reality started to sink in. This is also a move of like manipulation by market makers. They know what your stops are looking like. They know what you're doing, and they're going to do what's very advantageous to them. I think a lot of people did lose money from that big pump after CPI. Instead, that led to a big sell-off afterwards. So what's going on right here? Although SPY is looking a bit more bearish, we are favoring downside for now, but we have not lost any critical support. So let me stress that. We still have this 50 EMA. See the yellow line right here? That's at 619.4. If we lose that, then yes, it's going to be very bearish. It's going to be like a triple top rejection on SPY. And we're going to be looking for a bigger dump all the way down towards like the next gap fill. But if we hold above this, there's still a chance we try to test this and bounce. So whether or not that happens depends on the big data coming out for tomorrow. And I want to break down the specific details about that. So to start things off, let's talk about CPI. Then I'll break down the big data for tomorrow and President Trump as we have huge updates from him. And then once again, I'll talk about all these different charts. So what happened with CPI? Let's kind of do like a quick recap. The data was not that great, okay? CPI showed an increase month over month and year over year. We had 0.2% for core and then 2.9% for core year over year. So that's month over month and year over year. And then for all items, CPI month over month, we were at 0.3%, and year over year, it was at 2.7%. Once again, everything was showing a slight increase. Okay, and this is what the chart looks like. So you guys could see for core CPI, this went up just a little bit, just a teeny bit. But then for all items, we did see a bit of an increase right over here. And that is very, very important. So, this is not the best of news. In the beginning, the market was seeing news headlines about how, CPI is almost unchanged. It's not too bad. But as time went on, I started to see more headlines about how CPI is hot, the tariffs are into question, and this and that. I think that led to a lot of uncertainty and fear, which is what contributes to why the market started to sell off. President Trump's view of this is that he thinks inflation is still very low. He said the Fed should cut the rates by 3 points. Very low inflation, $1 trillion a year would be saved, according to President Trump. His view is that it doesn't matter. We should cut as soon as possible. And he has the right to say that. But in all honesty, the Fed does not really agree with that. What the Fed is doing, based off what the minutes have told us, they were anticipating a bit of an increase in inflation. We're starting to see signs of that. But the real question is this going to be more sustainable, or is this going to be more transitory? Are we going to see inflation temporarily go up for just 1 month and start to dump again next month and beyond? Or are we going to see inflation continue to go higher for a little bit longer? Does it keep climbing and climbing and climbing, and then it starts to dump later on? Right? That's the real question. That's going to be what ends up affecting the Fed's policies. That's what we heard from Bowman from the Fed and many other very important officials. So that's the most important thing to remember. So why is tomorrow going to be such a big day? Again, I'm going to talk about that, and I'll break down President Trump. Two things happen tomorrow, which is going to be affecting the markets. As you guys could tell, CPI caused quite a bit of volatility. That's why SPY kind of like pumped and then dumped. Same thing with the QQQ. We gapped up, pushed only to dump back down. ES is actually selling off right now. So the same thing was happening. We saw a lot of volatility thanks to CPI and also some earnings. Tomorrow we have something similar coming out. It's tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. For the American markets, we have the PPI data report coming out. Now, for PPI month over month and for core PPI month over month, we're expecting a 0.1 to 0.2% increase compared to before. But on a year over year basis, we're expecting core PPI to be almost the same, a little bit lower. And then for all items, we're expecting it to be about the same as before. So we're basically expecting the same data, if not a slight increase month over month for PPI. That is some important news. So make sure you're ready for that just to be safe. PPI is very similar to CPI in case you guys don't know. It's also going to be more of like a leading indicator. So if we see PPI going up more, that could be another sign that we might see another increase in inflation. It could also be greatly dictated by what happens with prices because we could see a lot of supply chains being shaken by the potential tariffs that are coming out. So why do I say that? Well, we have some news coming out. One thing that's going on, according to reports, is that commodities traders are racing against time to unload as much Brazilian coffee as possible before President Trump's new possible 50% tariffs on Brazilian products is implemented on August 1st. Of course, it depends on if deals are made or not, but for now, that's what the headlines are essentially saying. So we're going to see what happens. There are a lot of people who are scrambling to start buying products. There's a lot of wholesalers, suppliers who are trying to load up before the tariffs end up coming into effect. And then it also depends on negotiations, but that's what's happening so far. Keep in mind, Brazil also threatens to increase their tariffs on the US to 50%. And that would also impact a lot of prices, which could impact CPI. President Trump also said some very important things. He basically said that the US is also debating with and fighting with China in a very friendly manner because they're debating about policy. Simultaneously, he said he's just getting started with Russia. He's not happy at all with Russia and that he's going to continue to threaten them with more tariffs and such. But he mentioned that he wants to see a deal within 50 days and he's not going to back down. So that's what President Trump said about those countries. He also talked about how the tariffs are generating billions of dollars and how it's been very, very successful in his opinion. So keep that in mind. President Trump is essentially saying the same thing. Another couple of things. President Trump announced a trade deal with Indonesia. That includes a 19% tariff on goods imported from the country. And here are the exact quotes from President Trump. So President Trump said this. He said, "We made a deal with Indonesia. I spoke with their really great president, very popular, very strong, smart. We made the deal." He said, "We have full access to Indonesia. Everything, as you know, Indonesia is a very strong country on copper, but we have full access to everything. We will pay no tariffs." So they're giving us access to Indonesia, which we never had. That's probably the biggest part of the deal. The other part is that they're going to pay 19% and we're going to pay nothing. So that's a big thing that President Trump has said. He thinks it's a good deal for both parties and we will have full access to Indonesia. That's what President Trump has been saying so far. He also put this on his Truth Social page. He has finalized an important deal with the Republic of Indonesia, speaking with their highly respected president. Then he talked about how it's going to be opening up their entire market to the US for the first time in history. And they've committed to purchasing $15 billion worth of US energy and also other agricultural products and such from Boeing jets and our 777s. That's some good news so far that came out from President Trump, but we're going to see if this could help the market or not. Besides that, another reason why tomorrow is going to be so big is because we have more big bank earnings. We have ASML, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and Progressive all announcing earnings in the morning. For now, the expectations are still high for Bank of America and the others because so far we're seeing a lot of resilience in the banking industry and we're starting to see net incomes being pretty good. So that's some good news, at least so far. So why is tomorrow big? We have big bank earnings from Goldman Sachs to Bank of America. And then at the same time, we have PPI data, which could be similar to CPI. That may also cause quite a bit of volatility. So keep that in mind. With that being said, now we're just going to focus on the charts and nothing else. What are the charts suggesting? So looking at SPY, we have this bearish divergence on the MACD and RSI relative to price. And this bearish divergence is suggesting that downside is imminent and we could be dipping a bit more. Now, SPY was supposed to hold above 622 for there to be hope for a bounce. Also, this white trend line was supposed to hold for us to bounce off of it. But so far, we're starting to show signs of losing it. So that makes me suspect SPY could be dipping a bit more. If you're bullish, you need to see SPY get back above at least 625 after we get some big news. If 625 breaks, we're looking for a big break to the upside. If we're bearish, you want to see us fill at 619. If that fails us, we're looking for a big dip all the way down to about 617. However, here's what I think is going to happen. I think that's tomorrow we're going to see SPY dip a little bit more, and we're going to likely retest the 619 to 618 area. So basically, these lows right here, see where these green lines are. I have this green line right over here and this green line over here. These are the supports that SPY likes to bounce off of. The red line right here is where we like to reject. So we came close to the red line, rejected. And then as we hit this green line, we do like to bounce historically. So I think we test this green zone. We're going to likely test our 50 EMA and dip close to like 619 to 618. And then we have to bounce here. We got to see SPY bounce to maintain this range. If we get a bounce, if we get some like a good reaction after the big bank earnings, or if the market responds to President Trump's new deals. President Trump also said that a deal is going to be coming very soon between the US and India. I know we've been hearing that for a long time. It hasn't happened yet, but we'll see just to be safe when it's going to officially come, because eventually it's going to come. So I think we dip more. I think we're going to retest the zone. We have to watch and see if we bounce off this support. If we don't and we lose 618 tomorrow, there's going to be a risk of us continuing to decline to like 614 or below. So keep that in mind. There's going to be a big test. We got to hold this support. I think we dip more to test this support between 618 and 620. And then we're going to see if we bounce or not off that. So expect a little bit more downside, and we'll see if buyers defend. The reason why I'm not 100% certain is because it depends on data. We can't always predict how the market will respond to data, right? It's not just about is the data good or bad. It's about how does the market respond. CPI was not the best, but the market still gapped up, only to dump afterwards, which goes to show how manipulated the market tends to be and how the market makers dictate price action. So could we dip more? Yes, I think technically speaking, we favor a little bit more downside. We could be looking for that 618 to 620 zone, very close to where our 50 EMA is, but then we'll see if we bounce or not off of that. If we don't, I do expect more downside. So be prepared for some downside tomorrow, and then we'll see if we bounce or not, depending on the data. I want to give you guys a heads up about that. On the QQQ, we dip to fill the gap. We're approaching support at 555. If we're bullish, you want to see us get back above 558 to break out. But if we lose 555, we're looking for an attempt to dip back down to 552-ish. That's where this support happens to be. So I think what's going to happen is 555 will be tested. I'm not sure if we hold that, especially if Nvidia continues to fall. Otherwise, we could be testing 552 again, and then we'll see if we bounce off 552 or if we continue to dump. If we don't hold 552-ish, we could be continuing to fall to 548. So please be very careful and look for a test of 552, and we'll have to see how it goes off this bearish divergence. I anticipate that we're going to most likely see a bit more downside looking at the current trend and the bearish divergences that are continuing to develop. But just to be safe, make sure you watch your levels. Another confluence is the IWM Russell 2000. We have a possible left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. Now, if we want to surprise people, you need to get back above 221.58. If we reclaim that, we're looking for a rebound move. If we can't get back above 221.58, what's going to likely happen is we continue to fall like this all the way down towards 215. That's the most likely possibility. Of course, it depends on the data, but that is what this chart is suggesting, more downside looking at the head and shoulders. ES looks kind of weak here. We got a big rejection on ES. We like to reject near the lower 6330s, and we like to get bought back up around 6250. So my gut does tell me this might be dipping to 6250. And we need to see ES bounce off that. We need to bounce off 6250. If we don't bounce off 6250, we could be continuing to fall back down towards the next target. Is going to be like 6230 or so. So we need to watch 6250. Can we bounce up there and see some buyers defend? Otherwise, we're going to likely continue to fall. So please be very careful. I think we're going to be dipping a bit more for 6250, and we need to bounce off that. If we get good data, we could try to bounce for a good reaction. If not, if 6250 fails us, expect more downside. So watch that support and look for a big test tomorrow. On NQ, we need to get back above 23,100 to see some kind of rebound attempt. If we can't, the odds are going to be favoring 22,940, if not 22,800. So I think we could be dipping to 22,800. We're going to see how it goes, but look for some downside, just to be very, very blunt. On Bitcoin, we basically have 118,000 as our resistance and 115,000 as our support. My guts tells me the odds are favoring basically 118 to 120,000. We'll see if we reject or not, so give that the time it needs. Tesla, however, is looking kind of weak because when you zoom out, okay, let's just ignore all the lines except for the EMAs. We were at 368 rejected, bounced about 359 rejected, bounced to 323 rejected, bounced to about the 318 area rejected. So it keeps on making lower highs, which is not the best of signs. And if anything, we're rejecting off our EMAs. We're not doing a good job at holding above 310. Now, If we get some very miraculous, very miraculous good pieces of news and Tesla tries to break back above 313, we could try to push for 320. But if we can't do that, the odds are going to be favoring a dip all the way down towards 303. So if we get some good news, of course, Tesla could try to bounce. If not, we could continue to fall back down towards 303 or below. So watch and see what happens once we dip back down to the low 300s. I do think Tesla dips a bit more just to be very, very safe. For Nvda, we're not looking too good. This looks like it's going to be dipping to 169. We got to hold 169 and bounce. If we can't, we could be dipping all the way down to fill this gap, or at least start to do that towards 167. I am favoring 169 is going to be tested. We need to bounce off that. If not, we could be dipping to 167. Guys, Nvidia is looking a little bit weaker to me. So please be very careful. We got a very, very bullish reaction after the good news that came out about their H20 chips being sold in China. But unfortunately, it's not sustaining those levels. So look for 169, see if we bounce. If not, we dip more on Nvidia. Apple is consolidating. Look for a dip to about 208, some consolidation. We're going to see if this breaks up or down. If it doesn't break up, we could be looking for a dip to 205. So please be very careful. Netflix is on a downtrend, making lower highs. We need to get back above 1269. If not, we're looking for 1230. MSTR is looking a little bit weak here. We need to get back above basically 450. If not, we're looking for a dip to 431. We have a gap to fill down here, and I think it might be dipping to 433. On Celsius, we look a bit more bullish. As long as you don't lose 45.3, we're favoring 46 as a potential target. So keep that in mind. Supermicro is pushing, but be careful at this resistance near 53. We need to hold above 53 to push for 55. If not, we could be dipping back down to 52. Palantir could be dipping back down towards 144 to 146, and we're going to see if it rejects or not, but look for some downside, and we're going to see how it goes. For Rivian, we're going to be dipping back down to about 12.5, and we'll have to see how it goes from there. SoFi could also be dipping back down towards the lower 20s. 20 flat could be tested. We're going to see if we bounce. Otherwise, look for some downside. But of course, it depends on the big bank earnings as well. AMD, for those who are interested, has a bearish divergence. We need to hold above 157.5 to continue. If not, I'm looking for a retest of 152. ARM might be dipping back down towards the gap fill right over here, all the way down towards 144. PayPal may be retesting 72.36. We're going to see if it bounces. Otherwise, it's going to likely continue to fall. Coinbase is going to test 383. We need to bounce off this. Otherwise, we might be dipping towards 376. Amazon could be dipping back down to 224, and we're going to see if buyers defend. It needs to hold support. Otherwise, it's going to be dipping more. So look for 224, and we need to bounce. If it not, we could continue to fall if 224 fails us. So look for some downside. Meta is showing some weakness. We're making lower highs and lower lows, forming a bearish wedge here. So this is kind of like looking like a wedge like this. We could see, it depends if it bounces off 708. If it does, we could kind of push like this, then fall. But overall, we're favoring a move down towards 704. On Google, we're looking a little bit weak as well. We were trying to bounce. We need to get back above 183. If we can't, there's going to be a risk of us returning back down to 182. And then for Microsoft, we're going to see if 502 holds. We need to hold this to try to bounce back up. If we don't hold 502, the odds are going to be favoring 500 flat. So we just have to see how that ends up going. DJT is on a bit of a downtrend, making lower highs, and it's going to be at risk of dipping back down towards 17.7. And then the VIX is looking a bit more bullish. It's making higher highs and higher lows, stair stepping its way up. But of course, nothing is guaranteed. It depends on the data coming out for tomorrow. The 10-year is starting to bounce. It's going up as a result of the higher inflation. Same thing with the dollar. The dollar is following the trend, right? We're seeing signs of higher inflation right over here. And then crude is kind of dipping a bit. It's not too bad. It's slowing down a bit for now, but we're going to see if this bounces or not. So honestly, guys, the market looks like it's going to be dipping a little bit more. Be prepared for some more downside tomorrow morning, but then watch and see if we get a bounce off this critical support from a technical standpoint. I am not a genie. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what's going to happen with the data for sure. So we'll have to be very patient with this one and be very, very careful. PPI data comes out tomorrow morning, which is going to likely cause some volatility. It's very similar to CPI. Typically, it's not as impactful, but it could cause some volatility here and there. And simultaneously, we also have more big bank earnings. Bank of America and Goldman Sachs announcing their earnings. That could also affect the whole finance sector, thus affecting the S&P 500. So expect volatility tomorrow. Don't be surprised if we see a little bit more downside, and we'll see if we bounce off critical support or not. Otherwise, guys, I want to thank you all so much for listening. I hope you guys have a very awesome rest of your guys' days, nights, or evenings, wherever you guys are around the world. And be prepared. The market is very tricky. That's why you always want to manage risks. Don't go all in. always manage risk when it comes to the way at which you trade. And then always remember to set stops and be very careful. It's a very, very tricky market. The market makers have very, very tricky tactics to really hurt you guys. So I just want to warn you guys to be very careful, especially the retail investors out there who don't really have as much data. So be very careful and do what you have to do. I'll see you guys tomorrow before market open. Until then, thank you for listening and peace out.